Back in the good old days, circuses didn't just present talent, they put real humans on display. These weren't myths or monsters. They were people born with conditions so extreme and so rare that doctors didn't have names for them. From the infamous Claw Man to the most scary bearded lady, these are the 15 circus freaks you won't believe truly existed on our planet. Number 15. Colonel Routh Goshan. Colonel Routh Goshan's real name was Arthur James Cayley, born in 1824 on the Isle of Man. But in the circus world, he was the Arabian giant, billed at nearly 8 feet tall and over 600 pounds. For decades, his true origins were hidden behind wild biographies claiming he was a war veteran from Jerusalem. Of course, none of it was true, but the mystery worked. He toured with Barnum, shared stages with General Tom Thumb and Anna Swan, and was known as the Middlebush Giant after settling in New Jersey. His personal life was a chaotic sideshow of its own. Multiple marriages, a theft scandal, and a violent altercation with a rival performer. After a long run of touring, he retired in Middlebush. When he died in 1889, they buried him in a custom 8-foot coffin, carted by wagon because no hearse could fit him. For years, his grave had no marker. Circus folk feared body snatchers would dig him up and try to resell the fake myth. Number 14. Jesus Aceves. Jesus was born in Laredo in 1968 with congenital hypertrichosis that covers the face and body with thick, dark hair. He wasn't alone. Several members of his family shared it, including his sister Lily, a police officer. Jesus married and had 2 daughters, both born with the same condition. People called him Wolf Man, a label he neither chased nor ran from. Instead of hiding, Jesus took his rare appearance to the stage, performing across the globe, from Ripley's Believe It or Not to Japan's Grand Prix of Human Wonders. He starred in documentaries like Chewy the Wolf Man and toured with modern sideshows, including Hell's a Poppin' and the Venice Beach Freak Show. Many in his family believe they're descendants of Julia Pastrana. Unlike her, Jesus chose the spotlight by his own choice, making a career out of what most would have buried. He didn't ask for sympathy or spectacle like others, just a stage, and on it, he owned the narrative. Number 13. Pascal Pinon. Pascal, known as the Two-Headed Mexican, never set out to be a circus freak. He was a railroad worker from Texas until a promoter noticed the large tumor growing from his scalp. Instead of hiding it, the showman molded a fake second face, made of wax or possibly silver, and attached it to the mass. From a distance, it looked convincing. Audiences believed he had 2 working heads, and Pinon was launched into sideshow fame with the Celeste Guyire Circus. The illusion wasn't entirely harmless. Some accounts claim the false head was surgically implanted beneath the skin, a gruesome rumor never fully confirmed. Eventually, the manager paid to have the tumor removed, and Pinon returned to Texas. He died in 1929, having spent only a few years in the spotlight. His name lived on in fiction and novels that turned his sideshow into strange metaphors. But at the core of it all, Pascal was just a man trying to earn a living. Number 12. Maximo and Bartola. Maximo Valdez Nunez and Bartola Velázquez were Salvadoran siblings born with microcephaly. But instead of care, they were sold off by their mother to a merchant who promised education and delivered them to exhibition circuits. Their condition made them targets for exotic stories. Promoters billed them as Aztec children, supposedly discovered in a lost temple in the jungles of Ixamaya. The lie worked. They toured the US and Europe, stood before Queen Victoria, met President Millard Fillmore, and shared stages with Chang and Eng. Scientists studied them. Promoters staged their wedding in 1867 for publicity. But behind it all was a series of men fighting for legal custody, not to protect them, but to profit. By the time they were adults, they'd been through multiple guardians, lawsuits, and years of touring. Some claimed Maximo died in 1867. Others say they performed well into the late 1800s. Either way, they weren't ancient Aztecs. They were children taken, renamed, and turned into living mythology without their will. Number 11. Di Andrews. Di Andrews wasn't born into the circus. He built his way in, blade by blade. Born David Matthew Andrews in 1977, he grew up fascinated by stage magic. But by 17, he moved beyond tricks and began mastering pain. He learned sword swallowing from a mysterious performer named Dobbs in Pennsylvania and spent years traveling Europe, studying martial arts and ancient fakir techniques. Di swallowed curved blades, red-hot steel, and even bent spears with his throat using iron body qigong. In 2002, he helped break a Guinness World Record by swallowing 11 swords simultaneously, and in 2009, he set his own for the most curved sword swallowed, 120 degrees. He's performed on 5 continents, worked with Johns Hopkins to study his techniques for medical research, and appeared everywhere from CNN to National Geographic. Whether breaking arrows on his throat or escaping straitjackets, Di didn't just chase danger, he studied it. His body became the act, the discipline, and the story all at once. Number 10. William S. Hutchings. William Street Hutchings wasn't a performer in costume. His act was his mind. Born in 1832 in Manhattan, he was a mathematical prodigy with the ability to do complex calculations faster than most people could blink. P.T. Barnum billed him as the boy lightning calculator, and he drew huge crowds at Barnum's American Museum before it burned down in 1868. He later toured with dime museums, where he didn't just perform, he lectured. Hutchings claimed to have given over 30,000 shows in his lifetime to audiences totaling 80 million people. Whether or not the numbers were real, his speed wasn't staged. He could calculate cube roots, square large numbers in his head, and correct math errors faster than professors. In 1872, he performed at the White House for President Ulysses S. Grant. He continued touring until his death in 1911. For Hutchings, the sideshow wasn't about deformity or shock. It was about turning raw intelligence into public spectacle, one calculation at a time. Number 9. Ella Ewing. We've seen the strong, the strange, and the small, but Ella stood above them all. Literally. Born in Missouri in 1872, she grew normally until age 7, then kept growing. By 14, she was already 6 feet 10 inches. By her 20s, she reportedly reached 8 feet 4 inches, though official measurements vary. Townsfolk treated her kindly, but the outside world wasn't as kind. One public reading at a July 4th event ended in ridicule, an experience that stuck with her. Eventually, she turned her height into income, touring museums, and later joining Ringling Brothers. She refused to perform on Sundays due to her Baptist faith. Her house back in Gorin, Missouri was custom-built with raised ceilings and doorways. She traveled widely, earned more than most farmers could dream of, and never acted like a spectacle, even when crowds treated her like one. She died of tuberculosis at 40. Missouri still remembers her, not just as a giant, but as their gentle giantess. Number 8. Lobster Boy. Grady Styles Jr. was born in 1937 in Pittsburgh with ectrodactyly, a condition that made his hands and feet look like lobster claws. His family had carried the trait since the 1800s, and his father, already a sideshow performer, brought him into the act by age 7. Known as Lobster Boy, Grady had a strong upper body but used a wheelchair for mobility. He married Maria Teresa Herzog, and 2 of their children inherited the same condition. But fame and alcohol didn't mix. Grady became violent and abusive. In 1978, the night before his daughter's wedding, he shot and killed her fiancée. He confessed, but got probation. Prisons couldn't accommodate his disability. 14 years later, Maria and her other son hired 17-year-old Chris Wyant to kill him. Grady was shot and killed at home. Some say it was justice. Others say it was the brutal end of a man who'd lived too long in the shadows of fame, addiction, and a brutal legacy. Number 7. The Matina brothers. The Matina brothers, Lajos, Bela, and Matius, immigrated from Hungary and became a trio of popular entertainers in the early 20th century. Lajos was the eldest. Bela and Matius were twins, standing only 30 inches tall, still the shortest twins on record. Dubbed Leo, Mike, and Ike, they joined a troupe of little people performers under Prince Ludwig and toured in traveling shows before landing their biggest claim to fame, The Wizard of Oz. All 3 played Munchkin villagers in the 1939 film, though only 2 were listed in the credits. They continued in show business for years. Rumors circulated, especially about their drinking habits on the Oz set, but some castmates dismissed those claims. The candy Mike and Ike, which debuted shortly after the film, was rumored to be named after the twins. It's never been proven, but the timing was suspicious. By the time Leo passed in 1975, the brothers had lived full lives on stage and left their mark on both film and folklore. They were amazing. All right, guys, now let's move to number 6, Count Primo Magri. Count Primo Magri stood just 2 feet 8 inches tall, but his legacy was outsized. Born in Italy in 1849, he joined the circus circuit and eventually married Lavinia Warren, General Tom Thumb's widow, in 1885. Together they performed as a duo of high society dwarves, acting in comedic plays like The Rivals and Gulliver Among the Lilliputians. Their act was polished, but their lives weren't fairy tales. They toured relentlessly into old age, not out of passion, but necessity. Despite claims of noble titles, only Pope Pius IX may have genuinely granted Magri his count status, unlike Barnum's made-up titles for showbiz flair. Magri's supposed twin brother, Baron Magri, joined them in some shows. When performing slowed down, Primo and Lavinia ran a roadside stand in Massachusetts. He even appeared in a 1915 silent film, The Lilliputians' Courtship. By the time Magri died in 1920, he had seen decades of performance, royalty, and fame. Number 5. General Tom Thumb. Well, before P.T. Barnum, Tom Thumb was just an old English fairy tale. Then Charles Stratton came along. Born in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1838, Stratton stopped growing at 6 months. By age 4, he was still under 2 feet tall and barely 15 pounds. Barnum spotted him early, offered a few dollars a week, and rebranded him as General Tom Thumb. He even made up a story about the boy being brought from England at great cost. It worked. Stratton mastered performance quickly, comedy bits, dancing, impersonations, and became a sensation. His Napoleon act turned him into a favorite of Queen Victoria, and he later met President Abraham Lincoln. When he married fellow performer Lavinia Warren, the wedding was a national event. Unlike most performers of his time, Stratton didn't fade into obscurity or poverty. He toured for decades, built a fortune, and died a respected man in 1883. What began as a gimmick became a career, and in the end, a life fully lived. What do you think about him? Well, let us know. Number 4. Sandra Reed. Sandra Reed from New York didn't plan to swallow swords for a living. She started as a lecturer on albinism at a fairground sideshow in 1969, hired for her white hair and pale complexion. Her sister Doreen joined as well, and soon the whole family was working the circuit. Dad selling tickets, Mom doing vaudeville bits. Sandra learned sword swallowing from Ricky Ricciardi in Florida. She got good fast. From the mid-1970s to 1977, she held the Guinness World Record for most swords swallowed at once by a woman. 5 blades straight down. She toured with Ringling Brothers, the James E. Straits shows, and Clyde Beatty Circus, performing under names like Lady Sandra and Queen of the Swords. She later married Harold Spohn, a fellow sideshow act billed as the Fat Man. Sandra didn't chase fame. She just made history quietly. When others looked, she leaned back, opened her throat, and let steel do the talking. Number 3. Celeste Guyire. Celeste Guyire, better known as Dolly Dimples, was once billed as the world's most beautiful fat lady. Her weight soared from 150 pounds in childhood to over 400 by adulthood, and by the time she joined the carnival in 1927, she stood just under 5 feet tall and weighed 555 pounds. Her husband had just lost his job, and performing with the Happy Land Carnival, and later Ringling Brothers, was how they got by. Dolly leaned into her image with charm and humor, calling herself Jolly Dolly and drawing massive crowds. Her career came to a halt after a heart attack in 1950. She then committed to a strict baby food diet, lost 443 pounds, and earned a Guinness World Record for fastest female weight loss. She later published a diet book and lived until 1982. In 2014, she was honored by Coney Island's Sideshow Hall of Fame. Dolly didn't just endure the spectacle, she mastered it, then walked away on her own terms. Now let's move to number 2. Edouard Beaupre. Edouard Beaupre was no illusion. Born in 1881 in Willow Bunch, Saskatchewan, he looked like a normal child, until he hit age 9 and never stopped growing. By 17, he was 7 feet 3 inches and too large for his own horse. At his peak, he stood 8 feet 3 inches and weighed over 370 pounds. A fluent speaker of French, English, Cree, Métis, and Sioux, he toured Canada and the US as a strongman and wrestler. He once faced Louis Cyr, but lost in seconds. In 1904, he joined Barnum and Bailey's Circus and was booked for the St. Louis World's Fair. He died days later at just 23 from tuberculosis. But his story didn't end there. His corpse was embalmed, displayed, abandoned, rediscovered by children in a warehouse, and later mummified and kept by a Montreal university for decades. His family only reclaimed his remains in 1990. It took 2 urns to hold his ashes. Edouard never asked to be a curiosity. He just grew into one. Number 1. Clementine Delay. Clementine Delay didn't want to be famous, but when she grew a beard better than the circus bearded lady, she didn't waste it. Born in Lorraine, France, she had facial hair by her teens and tried to hide it. She married a local baker, and the couple ran a cafe. One day in 1900, after seeing a bearded lady at a traveling carnival, Clementine said she could grow a better one. She did, and owned it. The cafe became Le Café de la Femme à Barbe, and soon they were selling postcards of Clementine at the counter. She toured across Europe, performing at museums, cabarets, and shows, but turned down U.S. offers. In 1934, she published her memoirs. Clementine never leaned into shock, pity, or gimmick. She turned what others called a flaw into a brand, a business, and a bit of quiet power. She wasn't trying to be a star. She just wasn't going to hide from anyone. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for staying with us till the end, and we'll catch you very soon.